Hello there. Welcome to the NoCo, a podcast about the community and concepts all around northern Colorado. I'm your host, Ivan Wayne. Who will we hear from today? Let's see. Our guest today is Kelly Evans, the Executive Director of Neighbor to Neighbor located in Fort Collins. Do you personally think that owning a house is just another step in adulthood, or do you find owning a house to be a privilege? Have you ever wondered about affordable rental and housing options, how that stuff works? Or have you ever been curious about first-time home ownership? If so, stay tuned and see how Kelly and I discuss these topics and many, many more on today's episode. Okay, here I sit with Kelly Evans, the Executive Director of Neighbor to Neighbor, located in Fort Collins. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And you have multiple locations, actually. So we are at which location right now?
Yeah, we're on the North College location, which is our main office. And then we also have a second North College location at the Murphy Center. And we are on CSU's campus, providing housing support to CSU staff. We do Friday intake at Plymouth Church in Fort Collins, and we offer services at the Life Center in Loveland.
Okay, so we jumped right in. Let's peel back just a half second. What is Neighbor to Neighbor for those who have probably never heard of it?
Yeah, great question. So at all of those locations, what our primary focus is housing stability. So we provide stable homes through our portfolio of affordable apartments. We educate first-time home buyers. About 1,500 first-time home buyers in northern Colorado come through our classes or our one-on-one home purchase advising. And then the biggest service we have in terms of numbers served is our homelessness prevention program, where we are preventing displacement and homelessness of rental residents, as well as helping residents get into rental housing. So we distribute about $250,000 in emergency rental housing every year.
Okay, and preventing homelessness. Where does an organization even start with that?
Yeah, it sounds maybe impossible or daunting. It's not. A lot of times we have families who have received an eviction notice because something unexpected happened during that month. The transmission went out in the truck, or there was an illness, death in the family, so some income was lost. So we look at every situation, and if that situation looks like it is something that, we're going to be able to get back on track, there's a plan for sustainability, Neighbor to Neighbor will provide cash assistance and budget education and referral to that household so that they don't become displaced because of a one-time fluke that could honestly happen to anybody.
Now, do they repay this over time? Is it structured depending on the situation?
It would be more of a hassle, really, honestly, to have it repaid. These are checks written directly to a landlord. The average amount is $300. Now, for first month rent and deposit assistance, we can go up to $500. But these are grants that the cities and Bohemian Foundation and United Way are pleased to provide to Neighbor because it's money very well spent. Preventing displacement is far cheaper for our community than allowing families to be displaced and not have homes.
Right. And how would people even find out about this service?
We are the number one requested service at United Way's 211 resource and referral line. So families or individuals, I say families a lot because I view an individual also still as a family. Families can contact 211. Most local nonprofits in Weld County, even in Larimer County, know of us. We are the number one provider of this service. So through referral, landlords often know about us as well because they want to be able to pay their mortgage too.
You had mentioned United Way 211. What is that?
211 is United Way's phone and online referral system. So anyone who has some type of need can call 211, share with the operator what their need is, and get the most appropriate referral for their region in Colorado. So a variety of needs are addressed through that phone call line, and I just happen to know that rent assistance and securing your housing is the number one need.
Right. You'd mentioned first-time home buyers, education and assistance. Do people go through United Way for that as well? Or is it, you see more walk-ins that way?
That is not something that people would be as likely to call 211 for because it's not an emergency situation.
Oh, right.
So those folks often hear about us through different avenues, like their realtor, their lender, Colorado Housing and Finance group refers to us. So housing attainability as far as home ownership, those folks come to us a little bit more directly.
Yeah, I walked in and you were nice enough to give me a tour, and one of the walls here on site is all about home. Can you kind of speak to that? That's like your general overall mission and why everyone here is showing up to work.
Right. There is actually a national campaign that we are a part of to elevate awareness around the value of home. It's something that a lot, I would say the majority of Americans take for granted. I know I used to take it for granted before I worked here. And if it is not something that has ever been put in jeopardy for you, you do just kind of always expect to have a home. But with some of the population that we serve, it is in jeopardy. And so we are a part of that national campaign that is called Home Matters. So that's what you saw in our entry wall, just to help people understand you really need to protect home as your asset first, because without home, research is really clear that everything else doesn't go well really quickly if home is not stable.
Yeah, it's the foundation. It's the where you sleep at night. It's where you feel comforted, and everyone goes when they're done with their day.
Right.
Yeah. Why would you be willing to speak to elaborate why you think many of us in this country take housing and home for granted?
You know, I think we're just really privileged in this country, generally speaking. Not everyone is, and increasingly we're seeing, an increased gap between the privileged folks and not, people struggling even though they might work 1 to 2 jobs. So I think that it's really, if you never have had to worry about a stable home, sometimes people in the middle class, I know I used to do this, almost look at it as like a negative because it's something I have to clean. It's something that the lawn has to get mowed. It's a bill I have to pay. And I no longer think about it in those terms because we see thousands of people who don't have the luxury of thinking about it in those terms. So unless you have that exposure, it's just kind of another thing you got to maintain. But boy, it sure is a precious asset.
I am admittedly right there. I have some friends buying homes, and they tell me about the things going wrong, and I'm like, holy crap. Thank goodness I'm in an apartment still. So I'm a little guilty of that. But so you're saying that if you view home ownership as a privilege, sort of a dream for many families, not just another step in the American dream, it changes the perception of buying a home, period, for everyone.
Yeah, and in northern Colorado, it's hard. It's super hard to buy a home here. It's for almost any income level, it's really hard because our prices have just skyrocketed. It still is the number one way to build wealth and to build your assets, especially in a market that is thought to be as stable as ours. So, we want home ownership to be available to everyone. And we've got a program director who says buying a home can be a reality for anybody. It's just a matter of how long and how hard you're willing to work at it.
Right, because you got to save up down payment. What are some other things that are a barrier to home buying?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned down payment because for folks who might be in that group that think I'll never save enough down payment, there are down payment assistance programs. We partner with those programs. They see the value in our classes, which are free. So if a home buying couple or individual come to our class, then that attendance at our class does qualify them for down payment assistance. So that's something helpful to know. You can get on our website at n2n.org, check out when our classes are, get registered in our online portal. And the class will walk you through just things to know about what's an inspection, why is it needed, how do you pick a realtor, how do you know how much down payment assistance you need to have, how do you know when you're ready to actually buy. Some folks come in because they saw something really beautiful on Zillow and they want to buy it. And we say, our best advice to you is to wait 18 months. Clean up your credit, do these 3 things, and we'll work with you through that whole process. And then you'll be more secure and stable in your purchase.
What are some other things you instruct them to do besides clean up credit over those 18 months?
Save. Be realistic about the budget. Credit repair is one. Just consider whether or not home ownership is really, what they want. Do you want to have to fix the dishwasher every time something happens? There are pluses and minuses, but generally it is a really great investment, depending on where you are.
Right. And you mentioned the prices skyrocketing. I'm sure, are you familiar with the data and when this really started sweeping up and sort of that whole world?
Yeah, I know, every time I write a grant, I pull the data, so I don't have it memorized, but I know from personal experience that I moved to Colorado in 2012, and we were lucky enough to buy in early 2013, and I would not have been able to buy a house in the mid to upper 200s today. So 2013, we saw the spike begin. And boy, if you're a first-time home buyer today, you do have an uphill battle ahead of you. My first home cost $140,000. You're not going to find that in our market, unfortunately. But, again, we see people all day long successfully buying homes. So it is happening, and people hopefully will not give up hope.
Yes, do not dread, listeners. It is happening every day. You heard it here. It is not impossible in Colorado. Right. Is this because of the influx of people moving, the popularity of resettling to Colorado?
Yep, supply and demand. More people want to live here, so it gets more expensive.
So it becomes a seller's market right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating. I, myself, moved here in 2014. I live in Greeley, and I have seen rent prices go up in just the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine the same thing has happened, if not more so, in Fort Collins in the same time period.
Yes. Neighbor to Neighbor has been hoping to add to our portfolio of affordable apartments, and we have been able to buy nothing because the prices just in the last 5 years have skyrocketed. So, we're seeing anything that comes to market now is listing at over $100,000 per apartment. And that wasn't the case just even a few years ago. So it's even pricing out investors.
So you all wanted to expand, but you literally can't because you can't afford the per unit price on apartments to turn around and then, wow, that's just...
Well, and that's part of why you're not seeing more affordable apartments being developed, because we are going to hope to buy something and charge less for it to the tenant. Therefore, we have less revenue, and it makes an expensive product tough to cash flow. So that's one of the reasons you're not seeing more affordable development, because you do, if you're buying land or water or the hard costs of construction right now, a lot of these developers, they have to charge market or luxury rates to cover their costs. So it's really a tough situation.
Yeah, and we are at this location surrounded by housing options. Is that the case at all the different locations in Fort Collins?
So at Neighbor to Neighbor, this office where we are today is called Coach Light Plaza, and it's 68 units of affordable family housing surrounding our office. Our other housing, we've got some housing for folks with disabilities in South Fort Collins. We've got some housing for seniors in Loveland, and then some more family housing on the west side of Fort Collins. And none of those really have an office attached to them. This is the main property management office.
Okay, main hub. One thing I was just thinking about, when people walk in, what is the most, and you might have mentioned this earlier, what's the most common sort of huge barrier or hurdle they need to get over in order to start making buying a home be realistic?
Well, the number one walk-in that we get at any of our offices is, I need affordable rental housing, actually. And it's really not a great answer that we have to offer. There are some resources that we can provide, that we do provide. There is some budget education that we provide, but we really just have an affordable housing crisis. So we tell people our waiting list is 2 years long. Get on it. It doesn't cost anything to get on it. But know that in this market, you either just need to really treat this as a job search and stay on it every day so that you can be the lucky one that finds that apartment that opens up, or potentially look at some miracle way to raise your income, or look at other regions where the housing might be a little cheaper. So as far as home ownership, that's similar reality when people come in wanting to pursue home ownership. It's really, I make this, my partner earns this, what could we afford? And we kind of look at that.
2 years. People walk out the door thinking, what am I going to do for the next 2 years?
Mm-hmm. So what they end up doing, we think, is bunking up with a cousin or a friend and putting sometimes that lease at risk, because then that cousin or grandma or whoever is violating their lease, by inviting, 3 more people. But what are you going to do? Nobody's going to try to be on the street if they don't have to be.
Right. And just for listeners at home, the folks tuning into the podcast, we've been saying this word, affordable housing. Can we kind of define that just in case people are like, what the heck are they saying?
Yeah, it really gets technical. So technically speaking, affordable housing is anything under 80% of the area median income. And our housing here, where we are seated today, is housing for folks earning less than 30% of the area median income. So there's really a spectrum. You have homelessness, then you have the up to 30% area median income housing, and then you go up to 80. And 80, that's a 2-earner household. That's decent income, but if you're at 78, technically you're still considered qualifying because our market is very expensive.
Right. 30 to 80, that's a huge band for everyone to be in the same classification for housing.
Well, it's the same classification in terms of the broad term affordable, but not all of those housing options will apply to that broad group. Okay. They certainly will not.
Yeah, so there is a plethora inside that band as well.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that you moved to Colorado in 2012. What brought you to Neighbor?
So a couple of things were happening with our family. We would come out and explore the mountains with our small boys, my husband and I, and we really loved Poudre Canyon. It was our favorite spot of anything that we had explored, a little bit more off the beaten path. Fort Collins is a lot like my hometown of Lawrence, Kansas, so it felt familiar. And so after a couple of years of doing that, and me crying half of the road trip home because I just didn't want to leave, we decided to look into employment. And I'm somebody who really only knows how to run a nonprofit. My husband can do whatever he wants. So I needed to get the job first. And I wanted a job that was focused on a basic human need, and housing was perfect. So community just like where I came from, but add mountains and add a mission that I can't get past once you hear about it. It was perfect.
Yeah. So you got the position and then moved to Fort Collins.
Exactly. So I had to move first because, like any employer, they wanted me to start soon. So I gave my last nonprofit that I used to run a month's notice, and I hit the road. And about a month later, my family joined me. So that was good. Good to be reunited. Kind of an interesting experience for us, too. We had 2 dogs and 2 boys and then the 2 adults in the home. And we rented for a while when we first moved to town. So I really appreciated that experience because it was not convenient. We did not have a garage. We did not have a fenced-in yard for the dogs. Everyone felt a little bit on top of each other in a small apartment. So just really started me off at an early stage in this position, really appreciating my home.
Mm. So, living in an apartment in Fort Collins gave you an opportunity, or maybe this is what led you to say what you had spoke to earlier. I was going to say it gave you the ability to walk the walk of seeing home ownership as a privilege and as a dream for many people, not just the next step. You may have already been saying that before you moved, but you got to live both sides of the coin as you started this spot here.
Yep, because the last time we had rented, we didn't have children. And you do start to normalize your reality. So we had been in a home for 10 plus years. We forgot what it was like to, just not have a fenced in yard or have to deal with a weird color on the wall because we didn't get to paint it ourselves, So it's fine. It's to have a stable apartment, I know now, is a blessing. And we see so many people who that is their goal and they are so pleased to achieve it. But what we like to say is whatever your housing goal is, then we will help you achieve that.
Right. Do you all support families who you have got into a home ownership situation? Like, I'm sure that relationship doesn't just go away overnight.
We used to provide a program called the Nuts and Bolts of Homeownership. And it would walk through some home repair, some ideas about how to be a good resident in your community, a good neighbor. And we discontinued that just in the last year because turnout was a little low, and we honestly just have so many other programs. So we felt it was a better use of our time and dollars to spend those on the big programs.
Right. So once someone gets into homeownership, it's, all right, can we help you out with anything else? If not, then reach out and let us know if you need anything. But
yeah, have a good time.
Yeah, congratulations. Here you are.
Now, if the wheels start to fall off the bus, we do offer foreclosure prevention counseling.
Okay.
And we are one of the best in the country at successfully mitigating loans. So nowadays, we have hardly any foreclosures in Northern Colorado. So it's a very tiny program for us now. But back in 2009, man, we were killing it and just helping households prevent foreclosure left and right. So it is something, hopefully if you are educated before your home purchase, research shows you're 9 times less likely to default on that mortgage down the road. So hopefully those folks who kind of went in with their eyes wide open don't have that experience. But for anybody who does, we're here.
Right, yeah. Before working here at Neighbor to Neighbor, you mentioned that you had managed a nonprofit back in Lawrence, Kansas. Was that housing related or was that totally separate?
It wasn't housing related. It was my first love of disability services and aging in place. So it was a home health agency and I loved it. I was there for 9 years. At 9 years, you might start to get the itch for something a little different. And I'm a licensed social worker. So poverty has always been something, of interest to me, and I think of interest to our entire country since so many people experience poverty. So, housing affordability and working in that realm where there is a heightened level of people experiencing poverty was really a good fit.
Right. What is a home health agency per se?
Home health can be a lot of different things. We provided in-home, non-medical care to help seniors age in place, which is a fancy way of saying we provide you with housekeeping and meal prep and grocery shopping and transportation so you don't have to move into a different type of facility.
Right. Did you go to KU in Lawrence?
Yeah,
Kansas?
and you mentioned that you were connected to Lawrence.
I was, yes. We previously were talking about that. So I went to KU last year. So
nice.
Yeah, I went there for a PhD program. Nothing against the school. I loved KU's campus. I really loved Lawrence, and I loved Kansas City. It was a perfect triad. Mm-hmm. But the specific department I was in, just wasn't a good fit for my PhD program and what I wanted out of my 4 or 5 years there. So I ended up coming back to Northern Colorado and starting my PhD at UNC. So I was in Lawrence, living there, 9th and I can't remember. It was 2 blocks from Mass Street. Mm-hmm. So,
yep.
And I really enjoyed Mass Street. There's like such a history to that. Mm-hmm. And for my undergrad, I went to Oklahoma State in Stillwater, which is in the same conference as KU. And I never felt that same sort of history on Washington Street. And we call it the Strip there, out right off campus at OSU. And I'm sure you're an avid fan of Mass Street.
Yes. Well, and of KU basketball. So we've had some really good basketball games in the last few years with OSU. We have really rich history in Lawrence because there was an incident sometime in the 1800s where a man named Quantrill raided our town, so it's known as Quantrill's Raid, and he burned down the town, and it was part of the Civil War. So the history on why Jayhawks and Mizzou fans dislike each other so much is it was people from Missouri came over and burned down our town as part of Quantrill's Raid. So when I moved to Colorado, I met a Mizzou fan, and this is bred into me to dislike Mizzou, right? And so he and I both glared at each other because we're instant enemies. And somebody said, well, what is this about? And I said, I think it has something to do with the Civil War and them burning down our town. So it goes kind of deep.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah. Did you have a certain place on Mass that you enjoyed? It was like your staple while you were there?
In college, my girlfriends and I used to like to go to the Wheel. So that's not on Mass Street, but that was part of campus. Yeah. And then, as time evolves. We had a couple kids, and we would always go to Silas and Maddie's on Mass Street and get ice cream. But yeah, I was just in Lawrence last week visiting my mom. So of course we ate at Free State.
Yeah.
Had a really good meal and a couple beers. So yeah, it's a really great community.
You got to take people to Free State. It's one of those things. It's kind of like in Colorado Springs. Anytime you have family or friends visit, it's like, oh, we're going to have to go to Garden of the Gods again.
Yeah.
Why? Well, because it's just what you do. You take people to Garden of the Gods.
Yep.
So, yeah. You had mentioned that Fort Collins was maybe a sister reminder city of Lawrence. In what ways did you feel like it was a second home?
It just felt, the size is comparable. Fort Collins is larger, but they're both college towns. So that, is nice. Culture, it's pretty moderate. Lawrence is an anomaly to Kansas. It's the more liberal area of the state. But as with anything in Kansas, you do have a good mix, a good moderate mix of opinion. And I think that is true in Northern Colorado as well. I think that's been nice just to be in a swing state. I was really just looking forward to my vote counting as something. So I just appreciate just the diversity in Fort Collins. Diversity in terms of thought. One thing that I don't like a whole lot about Northern Colorado is it's not very diverse in terms of ethnic makeup. You have actually a lot more people of color in Lawrence, Kansas, and somebody might not assume that Kansas, had more diversity than where I live now in Fort Collins, but it certainly did. So that's something that, as we continue to grow, we'll get, more diversity too, I think.
Right, and it can vary from town to town. Definitely, we see that. Demographics vary between different Northern Colorado towns. Not to call anybody out or raise a roof for certain communities.
Yeah.
But you admit, so remind me, did you say that you used to visit Fort Collins because of family?
No, we just fell in love with
the
Poudre Canyon.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to mention the Mishawaka Amphitheater.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you been there?
Absolutely. And when our family comes, we always have a meal at the Mish because it's so great. And my husband and I love to go to shows at the Mish, so it's super fun.
I had never heard of it until this spring.
Yeah.
And then I jumped on tickets and got to go about, what was that, like 3 weeks ago now? And it was just mind blown. I could not believe, of course I've heard of Red Rocks, but that venue was something else.
It's really fun.
Yeah. And I was kind of blown away that you have to get a shuttle at Colorado State. You got to be there on time, and you take this bus shuttle up to the concert venue, and then everyone will bus back at 1 in the morning. Or you have to get one of 40 parking passes for the show, and it's
Or you just park and walk a little ways, which is what we always do.
Insider secrets. At the campgrounds there, or?
No, there's a little spot. If you get there early enough, a lot of times we like to go for dinner. It's just so lovely.
Take notes, everyone.
Yeah,
right
so,
here.
Hey, but don't take my parking spots, people.
Okay, there it is.
So, yeah, you just park a little ways down along the road. There's kind of a cutout, and then you walk up. So, if you have a trouble with walking or something, it's not a great plan. And then you can get there, have a drink, have some dinner, and then the show starts. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah, who's the last people that you saw there, if you remember?
We didn't go this year. Ryan Bingham, we've seen there. We've seen Hayes Carl. I'm forgetting the guy right now who's from Denver who hit it really big. We saw him there last summer, but I'm forgetting his name right now.
I was surprised how big some of the names would play there just because they liked the venue.
Yeah, the Head and the Heart, I think, played last week. One of my coworkers went. I was jealous, but that one was sold out.
Yeah, and a band that I enjoy, NoCo and Medicine for the People, were there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I couldn't make it though, so I definitely want to go to another show there.
Okay, good.
Maybe not on a weeknight because, man, the next day was rough.
That was late if you didn't get back to CSU until 1 and then back to Greeley.
Oh, well, we bought the parking permit because...
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, it was we didn't know if we were going to make the shuttle, and it was a whole...
Wow.
Thing.
Yeah, that's too bad.
But...
Now you know.
Poudre Canyon. You just fell in love with that.
Yeah.
You're probably the first person who's ever told me that.
Really?
The Poudre Canyon is what brought them to Colorado.
Well, it was.
Did you all do some hiking and camping out there?
Yep.
Or?
Camping. My husband was catching fish like no tomorrow. I was hiking. It's just beautiful. I mean, I'm from Kansas. Kansas is not the most beautiful place in the world. It's great and has its attributes, but in Fort Collins and Colorado, you don't have humidity. The number of bugs and ticks all over you while you're camping is greatly reduced. So, man, it was just really fun and couldn't wait to get back. So now it's amazing that it's, a 20-minute drive.
Yeah. I mean, to live 20 minutes or an hour from a place or places that people vacation to it's an experience. I grew up in Oklahoma, outside Tulsa, and that was definitely not a thing. And if people took vacations to Tulsa, it probably was with family, and it probably wasn't their favorite highlight of childhood or adulthood.
Yeah, we used to vacation when we lived in Kansas to Grand Lake in northern Colorado or northern Oklahoma.
Yeah,
and that was fun.
Yeah. My friends had a lake house on Grand Lake, so but now I typically go to Table Rock if I'm back home, which is up in south central Missouri.
Yep, my dad lives on Table Rock Lake.
No way, really? Yeah. I've been surprised when I moved out to Colorado. I know it's only a state away. They kind of like touch for like 20 miles right up there on the tip of the panhandle of Oklahoma. But I'm always surprised by how many people I run into who have some sort of background about Tulsa. Oh, I lived there for 6 months, or oh, I was just there a couple years ago. And I was always thinking like, no way is he even going to know where Tulsa is from. Right. Do you experience that with Lawrence here? Yes,
there are a lot of Jayhawks here. I still get excited when I see a Jayhawk on the back of somebody's car because I think, oh, they know what I know. But yeah, there are a good amount of Kansans that either just come here for vacation or have made it their home. So.
Yeah. So how did you even find Neighbor to Neighbor when you are in Lawrence, you're looking for jobs?
Well, my job search was a bit discriminatory because there was no way that I was going to move to Denver. My husband and I just wouldn't. It's too big for us.
You wanted the Poudre Canyon.
It's too big for us, and Poudre Canyon's north.
It's right there.
Right? So I did a job search. The Colorado Nonprofit Association made it really easy because job seekers all over can just hop on that website and see what's out there. And I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted and where I wanted to be. So we did a job search of the Front Range, not Denver. So it limits you, when you take that big market out of your job search. But I'm really pleased with where we landed. It's a great school district for our kids and, just great people.
Yeah. Do you think, take some time to reflect on this one, but do you think that this position and this mission with Neighbor to Neighbor has changed you as a person at all?
I've grown up a lot in this position, so I think that is one way that I have matured as a director, because to be honest, this organization is bigger and a bit more substantial in many ways than the last organization I ran. So, and I've had amazing opportunities. Neighbor to Neighbor has presented me with. I got to be in a program at Harvard for about 18 months, which was so cool. I'm a BSW. I don't even have a master's degree. So to be able to do that was super amazing. So yeah, I would say that in that way I've just matured as a professional. But no, I already came in with a super compassionate heart and an eye for, financially responsible nonprofit management. So that still is the same.
Right. So you walked into this position with the desire and the passion to help people, but you feel like over time you've gotten more efficient, your toolbox is bigger, and you're actually able to execute that mission better now than used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've really built our team here at Neighbor to Neighbor, so that's been amazing. I was employee number 10, and now we have 20. So just in 5 years, we've really developed the team, which was important because during the recession, we shrunk from 20 to 10. So just being a part of that rebuilding process is so fun and exciting. It's been great.
You mentioned how things are, in some ways, more difficult now than ever, but you've doubled in size in the last 5 years. What's the interplay like?
It
seems
really
fascinating to me.
Right, it's a great question. We were way understaffed when I arrived.
Oh, okay.
The sky was falling pretty quick for Neighbor to Neighbor. We did not weather the recession well at all. So it was really more about getting those positions back in place where we can collect rent that we need to collect and write the grants we need to write. Because if we're doing all of those things, we should have 20 people and we should be able to pay 20 people because they're just able to execute that much more, productivity.
Right. So you feel like you grew into the size you should have already been.
Yep.
And then you're using that number, that size of a crew now to address all the hard-hitting issues right now.
Right. Yeah, I think it's pretty impressive. We're fourth in the country in our national network of homeownership production. So considering we have like 2 employees who do homeownership work for us, and our market is really tough to be a successful homeowner, to be fourth in the country in our network of about 250 organizations, that tells me that we are operating in the best practice, in high efficiency, to be able to achieve those results with our limited team members.
Right, and changing people's lives.
Yeah.
Making dreams come true.
Yeah.
Housing counselors, part of Neighbor to Neighbor here. What does their day look like? It seems like a lot of positions here might be sort of juggling of sorts. Housing counselors, what are they up to?
There are 2 types of housing counselors, and this is such an interesting field if folks, are ready for a change. Housing counseling is just amazing because you are counseling, so you're helping, but you are basing it all on, the most important aspect of your, well-being and your day-to-day life, which is your home. So some of our housing counselors are dealing with emergency rental housing crises at the Life Center in Loveland and at the Murphy Center in Fort Collins. That is what they, help address every day, all day. So that's stressful. And I know for me, I wouldn't be able to do that job forever, because these are parents coming in saying, I'm going to be kicked out in 3 days and I have nowhere to go. So that is something that they're troubleshooting and brainstorming and working through financial worksheets, providing resource referral, working with other community partners to see, how we can work together. That happens every day. So that reminds me of something that some people in the community think, oh, well, you're a nonprofit in housing, how do you partner with all of these other groups? And we partner every day. And then the other type of housing counselor is going to be your homeownership counselor. And so their population is likely not in crisis, and they are planning for the future. So a beautiful thing is when you help someone with their first month rent to get into housing, and then 2 years later, the other housing counselor might help them begin their, toward their dream of homeownership. 2 very different realities. And then that homeownership counselor for homeownership is going to work with the budget, finding out what the hopes and dreams are, and then creating an action plan for achieving that.
Right. Okay. So it's kind of a scaffolded process.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the title of the first counselor that you'd mentioned? Just helping people more in the moment?
Yeah. Rental counselor.
Rental counselor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. That just seems sort of like what we would think of as a school counselor. You have no idea what the next person you'll be working with, mm-hmm. what their needs are, where they're coming from, what their story is. Mm-hmm. That's not just legislative work. It's not just advice. That is empathy. That is people mm-hmm. sitting next to you and helping you through a tough time. And
yeah, it is. It's really intense. And I think what keeps those counselors in their positions is the fact that we are able to help in a lot of those situations. So it's not just the stress and the anxiety of the reality of the situation. It's, for thousands of those individuals, we are providing a check that is going to solve the problem. So $250,000 is provided in that emergency assistance every year.
Right. And so sometimes it's just listening at Neighbor to Neighbor. It's just hearing the needs and the wants and the stories of people. I don't mean to put you on the spot here as well. Take some time to reflect if need be. Is there a story, a handful of stories that jump out to you that were just like, and obviously you can use pseudonames, but to put a story and a face to people who are working with Neighbor to Neighbor, I think helps people, I don't want to say understand, I don't want to say relate, but we, as humans, we love stories. Mm-hmm. And examples are great for learning and for just understanding. Mm-hmm. And so
we have so many.
If you'd be willing to share just a couple that might ring out.
Yeah, at our annual event just a month or so ago, we had a client. She's a resident. Her name is Amber, and she and her husband and their young son all attended to share their experience with Neighbor to Neighbor. And they were living with family to, save money. They're both employed, so any stereotypes around, freeloading don't apply. And the family member welcomed another family member into the home. That was not a safe situation anymore. The newcomer to the household just did not create a safe environment. There was a record of criminal activity, threats made against the other folks in the household. So this family felt like for the well-being of their son and one another, they needed to get out of there. So they bought a camper, not an expensive fancy camper. I think she said it was $6,000, and that's where they were living. They parked it during the summer in the mountains, and it was really a great situation for them. It burned down. So something caught and there was a fire. And so overnight they were displaced. Someone told them about Neighbor to Neighbor, and they thought, well, we don't have anything to lose. We'll go meet with somebody at the Murphy Center. And we just happened to have a unit opening up. So Amber and her son and husband were able to move in. And, again, it's rental housing. It is not fancy. And they could not be more thankful for a roof over their head and an affordable rent. So that's been one of the recent ones. When we have success stories every day. So that's really fun. We're working right now around a better strategy for sharing the stories because we just have such a magnitude. You serve 5,000 folks a year. You're going to have a lot of stories. One that I remember meeting personally when I was brand new is a family in Loveland, and they had used the foreclosure prevention program. So he was employed and got laid off suddenly and anticipated that his lender on his mortgage would work with him. But that did not happen. It was a big national bank. There wasn't a lot of sympathy, and they put the guy straight into foreclosure. So somebody told him about the Colorado foreclosure hotline, and he called, and our counselor, Katie, at the time, mitigated that loan. And I've got a picture of them with their two little boys standing in front of the same house with a reduced payment. He, quickly got hired somewhere else. So it all worked out well. But sometimes it just takes a little bit of help and a little bit of time to correct the situation.
Yeah. Some of these stories follow you home at night and you just feel like, and you have a long day, oh man, office grind. And you remember one of these stories and you just feel instantly recharged, like, oh, this is why I do this with my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and I hope that our staff feel that way. We just had staff meeting this morning and took a moment to share a mission moment. And so I just asked, anybody who has something that resonated in the last couple weeks, a story, share, because folks like me, we aren't on the front lines and we want to know those stories and we want to hear those feel good things. And, like Popcorn, people were saying, these kids in our youth entrepreneur program really understood wants versus needs. And that made us feel like our summer program was worthwhile. Or this guy came in for first month rent assistance in Loveland. And because he brought everything that we needed him to bring, I was able to send him out the door with a check written to his landlord the same day. That felt really good. So yeah, it's important to celebrate the wins.
Yeah, because there will be days that are tough. And that could be discouraging where you feel like, man, did I really make a difference today? Did I make a difference this week?
Right.
And it's good to reground yourself.
Yeah. How do you celebrate the wins being an educator?
Oh, man. Well, okay, let's start with today. So I teach an intro class of 95 freshmen at UNC, and I also teach at Front Range. But today specifically, I taught a class that I felt like had too much content in it. So I was already kind of worried about the class ahead of time. We try to stay on the same page in the same chapter as a department. There's 7 different instructors for intro psych. So we all stay on the same thing every day. So it's like triage. You got to pick and choose what you're gonna choose to lecture on. And it is week 5, and today was easily the least engaged day of the semester. And it was just walking out of that class was tough. I felt like, man, I put a good chunk of my evening, and I woke up 2 hours early this morning to work on this lesson, and then I feel like, did they retain it? Did they care? Did they seem bored? And that kind of stuff can be really tough as a teacher. And I just had to remind myself that, A, teaching is a roller coaster. It is up and down all the time, good days, bad days, whatever. And you just have to keep in mind that, well, for one, let's remember when I was a freshman, I didn't always look as enthused, but maybe I loved the class. I'm not the most expressive person in the world.
True.
But also maybe it's a bad day. I heard from another teacher in our department that a lot of exams are coming up. And so there could be outside extraneous factors. Maybe it's on me. Maybe my worry and anxiety showed through and I was not being as captivating as I normally am. Right, yeah. Just not 8 out of 10, not 10 out of 10. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think remembering the big picture. And so I taught math, middle school and high school for 5 years before going through my master's and PhD. And one thing after my first year of teaching that I did not expect to say, and I want to see if you can relate this to neighbor as well. Okay. The kids were gone. It was summer vacation. And the school year was over. And I realized that I had spent so much time worrying about grading and parent meetings and behavior and getting the next topic ready, having a good lesson. Those are all very important facets of teaching, right? But when it was all over and I sat there at home and the first year of teaching was over, all I cared about was the awkward dance, the Halloween party that we threw, the after-school times when I got to hang out with students or throw the football or get to listen to One Direction with a couple of students who were educating me on who Harry Styles was. Yeah. Those are what jumped out to me. And it wasn't the in-between prepping. It wasn't the details. Of course, ship falls apart without the details. But it's not what impacts you as a person. Yep. Do you feel that? Do you ever look around at months and years here at Neighbor to Neighbor and think the same thing?
Well, in any facet of our life, it's all about the relationships.
Yeah.
You know, people in sales think it might be about the product, but the reason my husband is good at sales is because he knows it's about the relationship. And I think for me at Neighbor to Neighbor, the relationships that I've been able to have been the best part of the job, and they always will be. You know, the kids that I got to meet who were on property, many of them are in these photos.
We're looking at a wall of photos here.
Yeah, in my office, many of these kids have moved on, but I will never forget them. Rayana taught me that. Some dance. You know, now the kids are doing the floss, but a couple years ago it was something else. So she taught me that, and, you know, some of these kids... Alex was one of my favorite little guys. He would come in my office and I'd just give him prizes for reading just so that I could get to know him and stay a little bit connected to the people. But it's always the best part.
Right. And that's another thing is one of the reasons I wanted to sit down and have this discussion was I wanted to humanize the process of Neighbor to Neighbor because people could hear rent-controlled housing. People can hear reduced price housing, affordable housing, or... helping first-time homeowners into a home loan. And they think, oh, okay, it sounds like government stuff, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, call me. If you think that, give me a call. I'm so serious. My number is 970-488-2363, and I would love to give you a tour because the data is showing right now that in order to afford to live in an apartment in Loveland or Fort Collins, you need to earn just under $20 an hour. A ton of people earn less than $20 an hour. So
I don't make that
right. So many people don't. I have staff members that aren't at the $20 an hour threshold, and we have worked really hard to elevate our starting wage. But, you know, as an employer, it is hard. But anyway, that's a different topic for a different day.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so we really need to think about who is the affordable housing for, and the reality right now is it's for anybody earning under $20.
Right. And this idea of community, that a high tide raises all ships. And anyone who says that they have gotten where they are today by themselves is forgetting that at one point they at least had a mother and that we have all been helped by other people. I think a lot of empathy and understanding can go a long way if people can rein back that judgment. And I hope that someone listening... we change their mind about something like Neighbor to Neighbor, or people who had no idea that these types of services were operating in Loveland and Fort Collins say, I'm really glad that this is out there for people.
Absolutely. You know, some of these kids who are the most fun, hardest working kids. Their parents are, sometimes single parents and sometimes not, but their parents didn't have the, fortunate reality of going to college. So therefore their wage is lower. Maria, one of my favorite residents who used to live here, she used to work at Walmart and then she worked at Home Depot. Not in positions that were paying her enough to live in a market rate apartment. So she's raising her kids, working harder physically than I work in my job. And yet, the housing that is available to her in this reality is right here at Neighbor to Neighbor. So there really shouldn't be judgment on it. It's just some wages are higher than others.
Yeah, and we're at the end of the day, we're all doing the same thing. We want a home, and we want a place to come together with family and share love and experiences. And Neighbor to Neighbor helps bring that reality to people. And sometimes there are 10 steps in someone's staircase, and sometimes there's an 11th step, or a 12th, or 15th. And you all are there to help people.
Yep, yeah.
Really grateful to have a company like you all in the area.
Glad to be here.
Is there, was Loveland and Fort Collins intentional?
We are a Larimer County nonprofit.
Larimer County,
Yep,
okay.
so that's why.
Okay, right. Do you know if a similar thing exists in Greeley?
I'm sure there is, and I am
do my
not
homework.
the one to ask, but again, 211 is the resource to call and find that out. Our counselors who are doing the referral on a day-to-day basis would know that, but I'm sorry, I don't.
Oh, hey, no need to apologize.
Yeah.
There is much I don't know.
Yeah.
You could fill the, is it the MetLife Stadium now in Denver?
I don't know. I can't keep track.
Right, yeah. The Broncos hosted the Raiders this weekend. They said MetLife Stadium. I was like, wait, where are they playing? But that's in Denver.
Oh, okay.
Because Sports Authority went out of business.
Right. Something had to come in. Okay. Well, good to know.
Right. You a Broncos fan? Football?
Yeah, I'm a Broncos fan because I have a 13-year-old boy who's a football fan. So I'm like, yay, Green Bay and Broncos. I know that that's good. Seattle, bad. So, okay.
Okay, that's the level. But your heart lies in KU basketball.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you go on any of the marches post-basketball games on Mass Street?
Yeah, of course. So we
Yeah.
lived there in 1998 when KU won. So I was
it
like
national
9
championship,
years
or?
old. Yeah, when we won the national championship. I remember my grandma being like so excited. My late grandma now, I remember her celebrating. And then we won in 2008. Again, I lived in Lawrence then too. So
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, seeing that march down Mass, it was after like the first game or whatever.
Oh, in the Final Four maybe?
No, it was at the beginning of the school year. It was like some tradition. I can't remember.
Oh, Band Day?
Maybe?
Yeah.
Sometimes as a graduate student, you're
You
more
don't know what it
removed
is.
as an
Yeah.
undergrad, and I just knew that something was going on after the basketball game on Mass, and I went down
Yeah.
there. And, yeah, it was off the chain, as the youth say.
We have to celebrate the basketball wins because the football wins aren't many. So you just focus on what, your strengths.
See, we said the opposite at OSU.
Yeah.
But, however,
Now-
since graduating from there in 2012, the basketball program's really beefed up.
Yep. We had one game with you guys that went into triple overtime just a couple years ago. It was, I can't remember if we won. I think we did. Sorry, but triple overtime, that's crazy.
That's okay. Have you been back to a game lately?
No, a few years ago.
A few years, yeah.
Need to get back. I really wanted my boys, now that they're a little older, to experience Allen Fieldhouse. But when we go back, it's Christmas time, and there usually aren't any home games that week. So we've been missing out.
Right. Besides the Poudre Canyon, what is something, now that you've been here for about 6 years, what's something about Northern Colorado that sticks out to you that makes this place feel like home?
I love the music scene.
Music scene. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
New West Fest is just so fun, and the
What is that?
FOCO MX. Oh, Bohemian Foundation, one of Neighbor to Neighbor's huge supporters, but also just a supporter of lots of good work in Fort Collins, hosts a music festival every September-ish, or August maybe, and they bring hundreds of bands to town. It's free. So they've had Cake, they've had Big Head Todd, this year it was Blondie, some big names, but then also a lot of cool local artists playing venues around town for 3 or 4 days. So sorry, Bohemian, I may have botched that, but that's the gist. And so that's a really fun festival.
Yeah.
But then there are others too, like FOCO MX is super fun. And just, the broader scene with the Mish or Red Rocks. We went to the Telluride Bluegrass Festival last summer, which was beautiful. So that's been really fun.
Right. And I assume, this is a given, you've been to Red Rocks.
Yes.
Did you go to Red Rocks this year?
Yes, we saw Brandi Carlile just a couple weeks ago. It was a super fun show.
Yeah. Red Rocks can be a gamble, though, with the weather.
Oh, really? I've only hit it good. So,
really?
Yeah.
I have not, but this time it was. I saw Fantagram. Oh, yeah. That is, I think it was late May. It was a great show. Great weather. Yeah.
Good.
It was perfect.
Yeah.
Let's see. I was gonna ask one more thing. I think it just. I was gonna ask if you had heard of Post Paradise.
No.
I interviewed them on the show recently. So.
Okay. What is it?
Yeah, they are a band that also features a cellist.
Oh, nice.
So you could check out that episode.
Okay, I will.
On the show. After you listen to your own episode, of course.
I'm going to.
Right. You were going to ask me a question.
I was going to ask, what do you love about Northern Colorado?
Oh, man. I don't know that we have time for all the reasons I love Northern Colorado. But I will speak to the thing that was one of the pillars for why I started this podcast. And that was the community. I feel like that word comes up so much, but it's true. And people can say that their hometowns have community, and I will believe them. I had lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Stillwater, Oklahoma, Dallas, Texas, and then I moved to Greeley. And I had never experienced a community like Northern Colorado. People were just more than willing to go out of their way for you and help you. People were excited to see you out and about. And then I just thought, okay, like maybe this is like the town of Greeley, or maybe this is just being affiliated with the university. But then you go to a brewery and people start talking to you and you're like, oh, holy crap, you're the owner. And you're talking, you're just chatting with me. Or you go on a hike and you're trying to selfie it with this great mountain. And then you have 10 people walk by and offer to take your picture because everyone's just super... Yeah. And I didn't think this was a thing until I started hearing it from other people who will visit Colorado. I'm an avid podcast fan. I listen to a lot of podcasts. And a lot of people will say the same thing after they come and visit Colorado. And I started to think, I'm not crazy. And I want this show to be a way for people in our community to listen and hear both the ideas and the companies and the organizations right around them, but also hear from people that they can literally walk in and meet. You know, if you hear this episode, or if you listen to an episode about a professor, you could be in their office next week. They're not in LA. They're not in New York City. Yeah. And I hope this show can build on top of already a great community of Northern Colorado.
Yeah. Well said.
So that's the goal.
That's terrific. Yeah. It is so fun. You meet people and you're like, putting the face with the names. It's so fun to live in a community still small enough where that can happen. Right.
And I've always thought it was unique about Northern Colorado that the towns never have, at least not yet, haven't merged. You've got your Windsor, your Loveland, your Johnstown, Greeley, Fort Collins, Longmont, and they're all their own unique little niches. Estes Park, too.
Yep.
Should be thrown in there. So.
Yep, for sure.
And so no matter where you go, it has kind of a little town vibe, and we're not that far from Denver either.
Right. So still get to the airport in just over an hour.
So I'm gonna let you get back to the middle of your workday here, but before I let you go, what is on the horizon for Neighbor to Neighbor? Do you have any big projects that you're looking at here with a telescope?
Really, we said that 2017 was our year of big projects. We acquired some new housing. We merged with another nonprofit. We launched a new campus location. So our new big thing is just going to be to continue to refine our programs. We had so many new things hit that now, Home Share is still a new program for us, and it's matching seniors who are homeowners with a roommate to maximize housing inventory in our area. It's win-win, less isolated senior and then somebody who's getting a home by sharing that housing. So we're going to really ramp up that program in the next year and continue to refine our services.
Okay, good. And if people want to reach out to Kelly Evans here, with social media, email, phone number that you gave earlier.
Yep. We are on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Our website, which is new and polished up, is in2in.org. And then my phone number direct is 970-488-2363.
First time we've gotten a direct phone number on the show.
Hey, I'm a social worker. I like people.
There you go. So give Kelly Evans a call if you so desire. Learn about Neighbor to Neighbor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ivan.
Yeah. I want to say a special thank you to Russell Isaac Long, the man responsible for all the music used here. at The More You Know Co. Are you looking for a little bit of bonus content in addition to the regular episodes on the show? Look for us out there on the interwebs on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at The More You Know Co. Until next time, peace!